Hey, it's time for episode 2 of the Connected Integrated Show. This product is thoroughly pizzled. And if you don't immediately get the reference, don't worry, I'll introduce you to something quite intriguing during the episode. So again, the Connected Integrated Show is all about the intersection of IT, SCADA, and telecommunications. It's a wonderful point to be in the industry because we get to really take a look at how the dots connect when it comes to digitizing and digitalizing industrial operations, manufacturing, and all manner of related bits and pieces that go into our economy today. And of course, the whole purpose of today's episode, the product is thoroughly pizzled, is to draw some attention to some conversations which are happening right now, and especially last week during the erstwhile World Economic Forum shindig in Davos, Switzerland. Now, you've probably been saturated with all sorts of sound bites, clips, and news loops about the World Economic Forum and some of the headline presentations and conversations and discussions that happened during the event. But there was a couple of events that happened pretty much on the sideline or in a slightly more niche or focused setting, which for me are much more interesting. And one of these had to do with a panel discussion around AI in manufacturing and a look at where things are going with very digitized and digitalized factories. See, there's this whole concept which is referred to as lights out manufacturing. Now, lights out manufacturing has been around in terms of a concept for a while, and in a strange way, for someone like myself coming from the IT world, we've been talking about lights out for things like data centers for some time now. In fact, there was this running joke about 15, 20 years ago about the data center of the future, where the only people in the data center was a man and his dog, and the man was there simply to look after the dog, and the dog was there to bark in case anyone tried to break in. And it was kind of an ideal concept. It was looking at a future where things were that automated, where there was so little human involvement in the day-to-day running of the adds, moves, and changes that occur when racking and stacking hardware. But even today, the best and most hyper-scaled cloud computing operators out there still have personnel on site to look after the kit. Now, it may be less staff than what we found in a typical enterprise data center or a telco data center 20, 25 years ago, but it's still not a 100% truly lights out operation. And coming back to manufacturing, see, what some of you who are following the show last week in Davos may have come across was that there was a keynote presentation given, and one of the examples given in that keynote for the future of manufacturing was a well-known hard disk manufacturer called Western Digital. And Western Digital was showing off their new factory and manufacturing complex in Penang, Malaysia. And this was a cool demo that was being given on a completely robotic and mechatronic manufacturing process where there really were literally 0 people operating machines on the factory floor. Fine. And of course, the actual shop floor was dimly illuminated. It wasn't completely dark and completely lights out, not quite, because there was someone on the factory floor giving a bit of a talk in the middle of a bunch of scurrying, robotic controlled mobile units that were moving, obviously, the raw material or finished product from post to post, from cell to cell. Now, all of that is good. All of that is good. And I to be honest, hey, you know, big thumbs up to Western Digital for having pushed the envelope. And in a manufacturing operation like making hard drives, whether they're mechanical platters or, you know, magnetic discs, or whether it's solid state storage, I mean, the assembly needs to be highly repeatable and very consistent, particularly where there are some high precision moving parts. In the case of mechanical hard drives, we've got these platters that spin at a high speed, and we've got little heads that need to float just above to actually read the magnetic or write the magnetic pulses onto the platter. So of course, tolerances are very fine. So we would like to ensure that it is like strictly consistent. Okay, good. So hey, well done, Western Digital. You've really shown a great way of being able to take some very complex sets of machinery, connect into some kind of network, build data pathways between machines and between systems that are used for, again, directing the process, monitoring and managing the process, and of course, providing the right kinds of feedback loops to people that actually need to still be involved. And of course, they showed this really good example of a control room, a new generation control room, which kind of looks like someone's, gaming dungeon, right? This basement level kind of like place with comfy chairs and a wall of screens and, some very funky sort of interactive, controls. And you know what? Some of this new control way of working where you're sitting in a control room certainly feels a little bit like playing Xbox, Nintendo, PlayStation. I saw this offshore 14 years ago when I did a trip to Angola and was sitting on board a production complex in the South Atlantic, and came across a room which had some rather interesting gear in it, and I was like, hey, well, what's this room? And it was actually the very first time that I had seen an ROV, a remote operated vehicle control room, for basically sending these small little diving submarines. These are kind of like little tiny remote controlled submarines that go and do inspection. They typically have a camera on them, and you can send them down, and a lot of that is like playing a video game. All right. And so my point in all of this is that, advanced control rooms and advanced, interaction with equipment is nothing really new. And as we add better connectivity, higher speed connectivity, lower latency connectivity, and we start applying better compute and better data processing, then we can actually, fine-tune or adapt the sensorial experience for someone sitting in a control room so that they can have a very pleasant time kind of playing video games, but actually operating a manufacturing process in real time. So that's one thing, that's cool. The other thing that I definitely picked up from this is the role of advanced computation, aka artificial intelligence, in the manufacturing process, and where we can leverage some of these new algorithms and these new ways of, again, using generative AI and large language models in the whole process of making sense or helping a human make sense of something very complex. And of course, in some ways, by helping offset the challenge of the feedback loop, where we have a feedback loop with a human somewhere in that loop that needs to make a decision. And the faster the feedback loop, the more quickly our brain has to work, and the more that we have to infer and diagnose in our minds as to what's really going on. And so this is a great way where leveraging a repository that has been turned into a model that then can be applied to speed this up. This is a good thing. However, you need to build the model off the right data set. And this gets back to the real elephant in the room, which is, where is the right data set? And if you don't have it, how are you going to actually get it? Because see, in this quest for shiny new Industry 4.0 AI manufacturing, lights out factories, we are still going to need to deal with some very mundane things in the infrastructure in order to prepare the way. And this is a great opportunity. This opportunity, as far as I'm concerned, is fantastic, because we can take advantage of a vision for the future, which might be some ideal concept. You know, I'm doubtful that we'll ever get to a fully 100% lights out factory. But I am convinced, though, that in the process of trying to move towards that ideal vision of a lights out factory, we're going to learn a hell of a lot in the process. And if we can apply our learnings and we can share the experience of learning together, we're going to be able to address the gap that may happen if we don't involve and our operators, our technicians, our engineers, in fact, all of the personnel that are involved in manufacturing. Because see, if we move towards manufacturing where there are fewer machine operators, then those operators are going to need to have other work which is not, operating machine, work which could be involved with understanding machine behavior, helping to prepare or helping to feed in to the model. It could also be to program machines, to program the actual data infrastructure, or to simply maintain all of the systems that are involved in a digitized and digitalized manufacturing process. And I find this really exciting because, if we sit where we are and we think doom and gloom that, we're going to lose tons of jobs in manufacturing on the shop floor, and folks are going to be put out on the street, and I've got these echoes of where we were in the early 1980s, where there was a major shift towards deindustrializing some of the more advanced economies, particularly here in Western Europe. And so instead of re-engineering and transforming manufacturing, we ended up abandoning manufacturing. We gave up, right? This was almost a sort of a public policy. If we look at Great Britain in the 1980s, but not only, if we look around most of the heartland of European manufacturing, a ton of companies ended up giving up. And they just said, well, look, you know what? We're not competitive. We're going to close down. And so folks ended up losing their jobs, and there wasn't a clear plan on how to, again, do that shift. And so either people sat on unemployment benefits for far too long, or folks ended up taking service sector jobs. And we all know, I think, after almost 40 years of deindustrialization, how soulless and how unuseful, right, certain service sector jobs are, because they don't really contribute any meaningful value. It's all about fluff. You know, I was talking to some folks the other day about search engine optimization, or people who build marketing funnels, or folks who do social media community management. You know, those types of work don't really produce anything tangible. You know, it doesn't produce an item of clothing or a food item or a part that goes into someone else's manufacturing process. And I think even worse than all of this is where we end up playing these funny financial games where it's all about moving money around inside some kind of computer system, numbers inside a database, moving that around and doing funny arithmetic with it in order to, again, take a cut from transactions. That isn't really productive. It doesn't really generate things that you or I need or want in the real world. But manufacturing is all about making stuff. And while I won't get into a philosophical debate about what types of right stuff are needed today and where we could sometimes manufacture the wrong stuff, right? We're still building things, making them in the real world. So we ought to pay attention to this. So for me, I think the future could be on the right track as long as we pay attention to leveraging those who are currently involved in manufacturing, whether it be an operator of a machine all the way through to, for example, a site director or the instrumentation and controls team, the IT folks, and capturing, all right, a human level understanding, right, and turning that into data that can be used to feed a model. Otherwise, we're going to lose something which those of you who know me, I like to talk about, something called institutional memory. So, I call myself a guardian of institutional memory, and I would like to help you all become guardians of institutional memory. By going through this process of becoming a guardian of institutional memory, you will be able to take what is in your mind in terms of lived experience on the shop floor, in the data center, in the IT room, in the telecom closet, or even in the design office, and all of the reasons, the rationale, the philosophy behind why we chose, or you chose, to engineer, to maintain, to operate something in a certain way, right? We get to capture that. We get to capture the rationale and the reasons why. And that is the thing that we risk losing when we lose institutional memory. And I had a really great example of this come up about 8 years ago with a customer in the oil and gas industry where we had provided an integration project. We completed and issued all the deliverables. And somewhere along the line, there was a loss of some of the documentary deliverables due to an internal relocation, so physical move from one site to another site, and also the unfortunate decease of a key person within the customer's team. So there was a loss of something up here, and there was a loss of something that was written down. There was, of course, a copy of these same deliverables that was shipped to my customer's customer. But my customer's customer was in a shipyard in Korea, in South Korea. And somewhere along the line, the box that contained all the documentary deliverables was misplaced and lost. So neither the customer's customer, the end user, had a copy. My customer lost their copies, and they lost the key person that had the institutional memory. And so it was left to my company, PhilCloud, to be the guardian of institutional memory. Because one thing that we always do, no matter who we work with, no matter what kind of project we do, we always make a safety copy. We always keep an archive, and we always remember, and we keep that memory alive. This goes way beyond just having a document. This is about keeping an actual memory of the project alive, and we keep that alive because you never know. 5 years later, 10 years later, something may come up. And so what I'd like to put on the table, and what I'd like to recommend to everyone who's watching this, who's curious about, hey, how could I become a guardian of institutional memory in my own organization? Well, easy. Get in touch. Give me a shout on LinkedIn, and we'll be glad to have a chat and to look at how we can help. All right, because there's a couple of ways. One is to become a guardian of institutional memory, and number two is to actually engage with an expert guardian who can be your backup. But enough about that. I want to get back to this whole thing of this thing is thoroughly pizzled. So the product is thoroughly pizzled. Because you might be wondering, hey, what the hell's this reference? Well, perhaps you are familiar with the author's more famous works, in particular a novel called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which was turned into a movie that Ridley Scott did called Blade Runner. Well, I'm talking about Philip K. Dick, and about 70 years ago, so 1954, he wrote and published a short story called Autofac. And Autofac is a brilliant, very short, very easy to read, very dystopian short story about an automated lights out manufacturing system gone completely wrong in the aftermath of a major global conflict. It's obviously written in the 1950s. It obviously doesn't cover in the way that we would understand it now in 2024 what modern telecommunications, the internet, the kinds of electronic and sophisticated IT and controls equipment that we have today. But what it does do is it basically highlights the issue of an unstoppable, fully automated factory. Or let's say that the entire planet has become a set of factories that are there to provide something that satisfies human needs and wants. So they make products, but they're making products that people no longer need and no longer appreciate. Number one. And number two, they're doing it to the detriment of resources on the planet. Because something that we will all have to guard against is unchecked resource depletion. We make a big deal about all of these issues regarding, the environment on our planet, and the fact that, yes, over successive generations of industry, we have used up certain finite natural resources, and we've taken raw materials and we've transformed them into very innovative material and products. And I'm not here to say that this is a bad thing or this is a good thing, all right? I think some of the politics on this are incredibly weird regarding the climate, regarding emissions, regarding things that we have to do to address what is perceived to be some kind of crisis. So it's not that at all that I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that if we, again, don't have the guardrails in place, we are going to lose out on the opportunity to ensure that resources are consumed, transformed, repurposed, recycled, and re-injected into the economy in a sound way, in quite a sober way, so it doesn't get out of hand. So anyway, I hope that in 20 years' time, we don't have pizzled products, and we don't need to hack our way and brute force our way into some fully lights out automated factory of the future in order to disrupt a system which is turned against us and even against itself. I really hope that we are able to build together using some really great emerging technologies, some really great new ways of thinking and modeling and methods that are coming up. I really hope that we'll be able to leverage these to build a healthy society for all of us human beings on the planet that actually works for humankind, and that we always will place the technology considerations as subordinate to our humanity. And if we do that, and if we take advantage of, again, addressing the skills gap or the need to, again, shift what our area of expertise is. So instead of being an excellent machine operator, I'm going to become the excellent programmer of the machine that is automatically operated. Instead of looking at a mimic screen on a SCADA HMI, I'm going to now have a much more interactive and much more real-time immersive experience when I manage and operate my process. And when I work with controls and instrumentation equipment, or even with IT, that instead of working with discrete, very monolithic software stack on an operating system on a PC, which needs to be patched and antivirused, that I'm going to be working more with composable infrastructure where I've got applications that run inside a container that runs inside a virtualized environment that actually is clustered, and I shift my area of expertise from yesterday's technology stack into today and tomorrow's technology stacks. And by capturing, again, the rationale and the reasons why, we'll be able to move from amnesia towards becoming that guardian of institutional memory. And I think that that's really important. So thanks for watching episode 2 of the Connected Integrated Show. Hope you enjoyed it. You know what to do. Like, subscribe. There'll be some links around, and I'm just pointing randomly because normally it's below what you're watching. But like, subscribe, and share. Comment and add your voice to the conversation. And of course, reach out, connect here, connect, whatever platform you're watching this on, and we'll see you for the next episode. And of course, one final word. This great video was shot on an ancient video 8mm camera, analog style, and obviously digitized, upscaled, and crafted for your enjoyment. So thank you very much. My name is Matthew Smith, and I run a company called FieldCloud, and we are the guardians of institutional memory, and we work at the intersection of IT, process control, SCADA, and telecommunications.